So I need to answer this with love and clarity. First, about the parable, and then about the harmful claim that the Jews or the rabbis or their teachings killed Jesus. In Luke's gospel, the master is harsh, reaping where he didn't sow, taking from the poor, giving to the rich, and finally having his enemies slaughtered before him. That doesn't sound to me like God's character. It does, however, sound like Herod Archelaus. Archelaus actually did go to Rome to be crowned king, and when he returned, he slaughtered 3,000 Jews to make sure that no one would resist his injustice and corruption. That's the image that the hearers of Luke's gospel would have seen. Now, the so-called wicked servant is actually the only one who refuses to take part in economic exploitation. In fact, Jewish tradition given in the Mishnah says the right thing to do with entrusted money is to bury it, to keep it safe. This servant calls out the master for his injustice, and the master doesn't even deny it, he just punishes this servant, taking what little bit he had left and giving it to the wealthiest among them. A reading of the rest of this chapter in Luke makes it very clear that this is not God, but Herod. And it sets that up in a series of 4 stories. First, we see a wealthy tax collector named Zacchaeus who partook in these policies of economic exploitation and then repents because he sees Jesus' way is better. Next, we see this parable, the parable of, in Luke, it's the minas. Next, we see the new ruler, Jesus, riding triumphantly into Jerusalem, not in a procession of horses and chariots, but on a donkey. He enters the city humbly to show us a new kingdom, a new way of living that doesn't involve exploitation. And finally, Jesus goes into the temple and cleanses it. In this prophetic act, he calls out those who favor the rich and take from the poor. And about the claim that rabbinic teaching or the Pharisees killed Jesus, that's just not true. Jesus spent 3 years in the evangelical triangle amongst the Parushim, or Pharisees. They did not crucify him. He was crucified after 1 week among the Sadducees, or the Saducees. But even then, it was a corrupted Saducean priesthood propped up by Herod and Caesar, bought and paid for with Roman money to keep the Jews under control by religious coercion. And by the way, they couldn't have crucified Jesus of their own authority. Blaming the Jews, the Pharisees, the rabbis, or Judaism has fueled centuries of anti-Semitism among Christians. Jesus died at the hands of a corrupt priesthood in league with empire, not Judaism and not the Jewish people.